Thank you very much for staying on here on News Today. Now, the Revenue Watch, in its latest report, says some key government agencies have failed to implement the laws, rules and policies governing Ghana's natural resources funds. The report indicates that the Finance Ministry, Bank of Ghana, the Auditor General, Ghana Revenue Authority, among others, for failing to ensure the appropriate use of Ghana's revenues from natural resources, including oil. Despite the failure of the government agencies to implement some of the laws in terms of good governance standards, Ghana scored 13 out of 16 points, one of the highest across the world. The report says the Ministry of Finance, for instance, failed to, among other things, submit an annual report on the funds to Parliament as part of the yearly presentation of the budget statement and economic policies. Now, the number of companies trading on Ghana's stock exchange has increased to 36. This follows the listing of investment company Mega African Capital on the local bourse.
Mega African Capital's listing makes it the first of such company to list on the stock exchange in Ghana and also first to list on the market in 2 years. With about 100 shareholders before listing, the company hopes to attract more Ghanaians to participate on the market as well as help other investors to actively trade in the company.
I think the main advantage of listing on the market that it gives you access to long-term capital, and that a lot of companies have shied away from that, because in attracting long-term capital you also have to give away ownership, and sometimes people do not want to give away ownership because they want to control everything themselves. But without long-term capital it is very difficult to grow. You can't use short-term capital to do long-term projects. You run a big risk when you do that. So we believe that companies that have a long-term vision should tap the market for capital, and that's the only way to survive. We cannot continue to grow our economy using short-term funding.
Deputy Managing Director of the Ghana Stock Exchange, Acquah Nana Ama, applauding the move, indicated that the Ghana Stock Exchange is working hard to attract more of such companies on the market.
Here we have the first investment company going to the market, doing what we call a restricted offer, and raising money. How much? 25 million from a few people, and deciding to list on the market, and in other words giving them liquidity. What we'll try and do is to try and encourage more funds to come, because sometimes people don't like the huge public issues, they like the restricted offers, and this is like a fund. They raise money and they'll be investing in other sectors, real estate, shares, etc., in other countries and also in Ghana. So we'll be doing a lot more of marketing, talking to potential funds. There are some already in Ghana.
He added that they are working on a review of the rules for the market, especially rules for funds coming onto the market.
Revenue Watch Institute, in its latest report, says some key government agencies have failed to implement laws and rules as well as policies governing Ghana's natural resources. I'm joined over the telephone by Emmanuel Kuyule, his Revenue Watch Institute Africa coordinator. Hello, Emmanuel. Well, I've lost Emmanuel, put in efforts to raise him back over the telephone. Meanwhile, let's look on to the Ghana alternative markets for a quick update on the Koforidua-based pharmaceutical firm Intravenous Infusions Limited, Meridian Marshall and Samba Food Processing Company could become the first companies to list on the Ghana alternative market of the Ghana Stock Exchange. Managers of the market told Joy News the companies are almost through with the necessary documentations to get listed on the exchange. Move away from that story and get back onto how some key government agencies may have failed to implement the laws, rules and policies governing Ghana's natural resources funds. And I'm joined over the telephone by Emmanuel Kuyule, his Revenue Watch Institute Africa coordinator. Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Emmanuel, many thanks for your time. Hello, Emmanuel.
Good afternoon, but the line is very bad. I can hear you very
I'm
well.
sorry about that. Let's try it again. What is informing the stance by Revenue Watch that indeed some key government agencies have not implemented the laws and policies as far as managing our natural resources fund is concerned?
I can barely hear you, to be honest. So can you repeat the question again?
What is informing your report?
Oh, okay. What is informing our report? Well, if I heard you correctly, you're asking what informed our report. Okay. So this is part of our normal work actually. From time to time, we do issue different kinds of research reports in the natural resource sector. This is one of such reports. We took a look at 22 natural resource funds globally. And as you are aware, in 2011, when the Petroleum Revenue Management Law was passed, Ghana made a very important decision in that law to establish, two funds, the Heritage to save some of the oil revenues of future generation, and also the Stabilization Fund, and then some allocation to the budget. So we did a country profile on Ghana as part of these 22 natural resource funds to see how Ghana was complying with the rules in the law, but also comparing that to how other natural resource funds were being managed in the region, but also globally, and also some of the gaps in the implementation. This is to inform policy. It is also to inform citizens about what is going on, so that we can all head towards a better management of the oil.
So which period is under consideration here?
The profile we did on Ghana is from when the law was passed up until January 2013.
I see. Now let's look at ways within which your report says that our government has failed to implement these laws.
Well, it's hard to hear you, but
I'm asking ways by which these government agencies, circumstances by which they may not have implemented those laws, rules, and policies.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. But to start with, the profile actually looked at various areas, and we had concluded that actually, if you look at the governance standards generally, they were quite robust, and Ghana had actually it scores quite high, actually 13 over 16 from the indicators we use on the regulations that are in place. We did, as part of that, also identify some of the implementation gaps, as this within the laws, the rules, and the policies. So maybe that's what you are referring to. And as of January 2013, actually these findings collaborate some of the reports that the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, which is a Ghanaian public oversight committee set up under that same law, also put out. And what we found at that time, was that there was still a challenge, and I think there's still a challenge with the issue of benchmark revenue in terms of the formula to get it accurately. And also, at that time, a full annual report on the funds to Parliament had not been presented as required by the law, including some of the other recommendations that
Emmanuel.
Yes.
You made an example of how the Ministry of Finances failed to, among other things, submit an annual report on the funds to Parliament as part of the yearly presentation of the budget statements and economic policies. So, at the point when the minister is perhaps doing the budget reading and tells us how we have used our ABFA, doesn't count in this report.
Can you repeat that?
I'm saying that with the example of the Ministry of Finance, at the point that the Minister of Finance is reads budget statements in Parliament and tells us how we have used our ABFA, it doesn't count as you know, it doesn't count for this report.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. The report that during the reading of the budget,
yes,
you know, the references the finance minister makes in terms of the forecast and so on. That's good. But you should remember that what we are looking at is that we are looking at the implementation of the Petroleum Revenue Management Law. In that law, there are explicit requirements of reporting requirement by the ministry and other specific agencies. And one of those requirements is that in addition to those references that the finance minister makes, there has to be a formal report that is attached to the budget, also laid before Parliament. And if you remember, I think it was in 2000 during the reading of the 2012 or 13 budget, I'm not sure, but one of them, there was a controversy in Parliament. I think it was raised by the minority that they hadn't seen the full report on the petroleum revenue management, and then I think the leadership had to come to some consensus before the budget was laid. So these are some of the issues we are referring to.
I see. Now let's get back to your report itself. Ghana scored 13 out of 16 points. What does this mean?
Well, what it means is that, you know, in terms of the rules, you know, we have, you know, we have very strong rules within the law, you know, in terms of transparency, publications, quarterly publications, and I must say that since then, the Ministry of Finance and the other agencies have improved on the reporting requirement, which is very good, means that they are listening and doing their work. But beyond that, there are key other issues that need to be addressed, which is the implementation, which is very, very important, because beyond just publishing petroleum revenues, for example, putting out a report or putting a report on the website, what is very important is how the money is allocated and how it's spent. Because at the end of the day, it is that which will bring about the needed improvement in the lives of the people. So there are other aspects beyond just the publication that is very important.
And your recommendation in this report for implementation, which seems to be one of the biggest problems, is... Hello, Emmanuel.
Yes?
I'm asking what your recommendations are in this report.
Well, one of the recommendations we have made, for example, is that the manner in which the oil revenues are allocated, of course, the minister complies with the 4 priority areas that he presented in the budget. But the way, for example, in which the money is allocated to different agencies, there are so many agencies in our view. The ministry may disagree, but at least in 2012, there were 16 agencies which all had different responsibilities and bits and pieces of oil revenue to implement. 2013, there were 15 agencies, and then 2014, now there are 6 agencies. We think that's thinly spreading oil revenue. We think that, you know, it doesn't help in terms of efficiency, but also monitoring. And that is one concrete recommendation we made that could be improved. We also raised the issue about the National Oil Company, and perhaps take this opportunity to clarify some of the things we said there. I mean, we have not, for example, said anything about whether Ghana should have a strong oil company or not. What we have said is that we think that because if you look at the revenues that has come into the government so far and the allocations that the law requires the ministry to do, it means that Ghana has taken a deliberate decision to put quite a lot of the oil revenues into the National Oil Company for good purposes. But that also means that then we need to have very strong transparency and accountability requirements in the National Oil Company to make sure that those investments will yield good returns for the country and for the citizens.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel, for your time. Emmanuel Kuyule joined us from Koforidua.